Good morning. Thanks, everybody. Go ahead, Mary Ann. We'll start at the finance. And actually, Tyler Schroeder just walked in. So actually, I think we'll back the meeting up just a hair.
Okay.
And we'll go to the meetings real quick. I'm going to take the screen back real quick, Mary Ann.
Sure.
And then we'll get the minutes up here. And everybody can see the minutes there. And those went out a couple of days ago as well, if anybody had time to read them. If there's any corrections or changes to the minutes, we would appreciate that now. If not, a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
Thanks, Mayor Cortias.
I'll second them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Graham. Any discussion or changes or comments? And hearing no discussion or comments, would welcome a silence of acknowledgement. So hearing no objections, we would move the minutes to approval. And silence is golden here, no objections, we'll consider the minutes approved. And now that Tyler's here as well, I want to do just a quick roll call. So we have everybody on here accounted for. So I'm looking up the screen today. I see Councilmember Lillquist. Good morning, Mary Ann Caldwell, Mayor Seth Fleetwood from Bellingham, Mayor Scott Cortias from Linden, Commissioner Robert Roy Graham from the Fire Chiefs Association, Fire Commissioners Association, Fire Chief Hank Mailing, the Fire Chief Association President, Chief Jerry DeBryan, Chairperson of the EMS and Trauma Council, Steve Cohen, our training specialist, Dr. Marv Wayne, the County Medical Program Director, Rosalie Cohen, our office coordinator, Katie Poole, our VISTA volunteer, Mr. Dewey Dessler, our citizen representative. I see Division Chief Scott Rickman up there from BFD. And I saw Chief Pethick up there earlier. I don't see him on the screen at this moment, but I did see him check in. Am I missing anyone? Great, thanks. So appreciate that. Tyler, we're just back at the top of the agenda, the clever review discussion. So Mary Ann was going to kick it off with the finance portion and give an overview of that. So I'll stop sharing the screen and you can have it back, Mary Ann. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, I'm presuming that everybody can see this spreadsheet. So this is we're going to start out with the standard cost forecast per unit and how this was developed. And I didn't see that Forrest was here, so he's the one that, so actually to back up a little bit, this financial model was developed during the last levy by Patricia Dunn. And so we basically used the same format as what was done in the last levy. And we have an extensive Excel workbook that has several tabs to it, but we're just going to show you two relevant tabs. And one is the per unit. And this was developed by Forrest. And what he did is taking the 2021 statistics for Bellingham Fire Department and for Fire District 7, he developed what the total cost of each unit, well, actually he developed a total cost for 4 units and based on not only actual, but also what is needed. And so that's what we have in the 2021 column. The thing that makes this standard costing is that taking that total budget, he broke it down to how much an average paramedic's wages and benefits are, an average EMS captain's wages and benefits, and MSO wages and benefits. And using that information, we know from the study that was done by a consultant for Bellingham Fire Department that the number of medics per unit that are needed is 9.2 FTEs. So with standard costing, he took the 9.2 times the average wages and benefits for the paramedics and came up with an amount per unit. We allowed 0.33 MSO FTE per unit. The EMS 1 captain's unit, which is not on this page, but that is at 4.6 captains FTE per unit. And we're using some other assumptions that hopefully you can see over here, down here, that we're using CPIW, which is Consumer Price Index for wages, plus 1%, which is what the King County protocol does. And we use it, the CPI index that we use is Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue, because that's the closest one to us. We have an overhead percent of 10%, which is fairly modest. And an admin FTE per unit of 1/3 per unit. So he was able to take in those numbers, the number of FTEs per unit, timesing it by the average wages to come up with the wages and benefits that are needed. And then as far as he took the total budget for like supplies and fuel and uniforms, medical exams, etc., which represented 4 units, and just divided by 4 to come up with a price per unit. So the 2021 column is actually the base column. And then we apply CPIW plus 1% to those figures and extrapolate them out through 2028 to come up with the per unit cost for that entire time period. So what we have down here in the red is under our current budget, how much we're paying per unit, which in 2021, we paid $2,073,780. The difference between that and the model that was developed is $178,395. So it's the difference between this number here and this number here to show what the increase in cost per unit is under the current model and the new model. And so you can see that that's what we have in red, and the differences are on this line here. This line is the CPIW plus 1 starting, right now we're just doing CPIW, which is 6.29%. But starting next year, we go to CPIW plus 1%, which is the next set of numbers. So that pretty much, does anybody have any questions on this tab? Because it's all going to go over to the all units tab, and I'll explain that once we find out whether anybody has any questions on this one. Hearing no questions, let's go to the all units forecast. And I'm going to take a drink. Okay. So the first part is the revenues. So this is actually taking the per unit cost, and now up here on line 5, we have the number of units that are expected. So currently we have 4 units, but next year we're planning on, of course, 5 units, and from there on out 5 units. We have the beginning fund balance that's in the fund. Then we have the revenue section. We have sales tax revenue increasing at a 4% factor per year. We have GEMT being at, we're thinking a continuing amount of 2.3 million, and then increasing each year at CPIW plus 1%, which that's what our factor is for inflation, or the inflator factor. EMS fees, no matter what we do, we don't seem to get more than about 2 million. So we're just keeping that flat. Interest income and delinquent taxes and miscellaneous like timber tax and stuff is our estimates on this line item down here. So our total revenue, non-levy revenue, this does not include the property tax, that'll come in later. All our non-levy revenues are on line 13. So then this is taking the per unit amounts and just timesing them by the number of units. So in this case, 5 units. So this comes up with the total EMS operations expense, the administrative expense section. We have a facilities and technical allowance. And then we have the 10% overhead, which takes 10% of this total fire district standard operating cost line item. And the total unit for unit ALS reimbursement is on this last line, line 40. These red amounts here are what we would have been paying out this year if we were under the new model. So right now we're paying out a total of 8.3 million to Bellingham Fire District and to Fire District 7 for the units this year. Under the new cost model, we'd be paying out 9 million. Same thing on 2022. So that's just, you know, a kind of benchmark comparisons there. Then we get into the other expenditures section, and dispatch. We're currently paying, these are the budgets for, by the way, the budgets, the actual in 2021 column now is what we're working with. And then the budget for 2022 is in this column C, which is 2022. So we're paying 2.155 million for dispatch this year. Per forest, we're expecting to go to 2.3 next year. And then all of these are being forecast at CPIW plus 1%. EMS administration, of course, this includes Mike and Scott and Rosalie and our IT guy, which I'm having a brain space here right now.
Jeremy Morton, Marianne.
Thank you. So then, oh, actually the training coordinator is on a separate line, so that's Steve, but this EMS administration here is the other 3 FTEs. And then we have the paramedic school and lateral training. So we have a factor in here for both paramedic school and lateral training. We have a drop for next year because this year we're running a bigger class, but going forward, this is for a class of 6 students. Let's see if I can get this. That's a total for, no, 4 students, never mind. It's for 4 students in the training class and then 4 students under lateral training. So that's what we have in the all unit forecast going forward. And then EMS 1, we're going from 729,000 this year to $1 million basically, because we're now factoring this, and instead of at 4 captains, it really takes 4.6 to do a 1-person unit. So that's why there's a large increase for the EMS 1 unit. As you can see, here's the budget items that for 5th unit implementation in 2022, the BLS subsidy of 5 million that was just adopted last night, the 1.4 million for Stryker that was just adopted last night. And then going forward, I see that the levy planning committee has added 1.5 million per year for BLS subsidy. This is just the ongoing maintenance costs for the Stryker lifts, which is 14, 15, 7 up to 17,000 per year. And then we have 3 community paramedics. So that's on this line here. We have the Whatcom County overhead allocation. Again, everything is being projected to increase at CPIW plus 1%. The equipment lease, however, will stay flat. It's 523,636 per year. And then the maintenance costs on both Image Trend and Gelada and any other software that we have is on this last line item here. So this gives us our total ALS expense, and this is our net loss before levy. So our shortfall, based on taking this non-levy revenue up here minus all the expenses, and this is what our loss is. But then we add in what the levy is, which it takes a huge jump next year because our levy this year is about 20 cents, and we're proposing a 29.5 levy. And with the way that assessed valuations have been going up, it results in an increase from $8.5 million a year up to $13.2 million a year. And so This line down here is our target fund balance of 70% of annual operations. And then this line here, I added some coloration to show where we have excess available for spending and where we run into a deficit as far as meeting our target fund balance. So because what I did in the when this latest version of the workbook was sent out, I went in and got the new King County CPIW projections. And the last ones that we were using was from their last economic forecast, which was done in August of 2021. They just released a new economic forecast from March of 2022. And by using those updated inflators, we now end up with a $4 million deficit in relation to our target fund balance. So then if anybody, also I should mention the levy plan does not include things like, I know there was talk of Fire District 7, EMS 1 captain unit, does not include that. Any potential Station 12 renovations, contributions to public safety radio, does not include, I understand in that, but I have no details, that apparently in the future we'll be doing some considerable upgrades to Prospect that will probably have an impact on dispatch fees. So that's not included. And when I was reading through the levy plan, I saw that we apparently would like to add 2 more community paramedics, and that's also not in the plan. So
And Marianne, just for a second there, I have a couple hands up. Councilmember Lillquist has a question at the moment.
okay,
Yeah,
and I just wanted to say I'm pretty much done. So yeah, question.
Okay, good timing. So Marianne, I'm trying to compare the current spreadsheet you're showing us to the one that was in the packet I have. And it seems like it's quote unquote a little bit worse in a number of ways. Is that accurate? Can you describe differences between the spreadsheet I saw in that draft plan and the one I'm looking at now?
Well, actually the all units, I added some coloration, but actually it should be in the packet that there is it's still got that negative $4 million available for spending in 2028. Now, there was a prior version from probably a week or so ago before I updated the CPIW figures that showed a surplus.
Okay, I'm looking at version 7 of the draft plan. I guess that's not current.
Right.
Yeah, Councilmember, we're up on version 8, and I did replace that, and I'd be glad to send you a version 8.
Sure, please do. But maybe then the question is, please describe to me the difference between version 7 and version 8 with regard to finances and why that changed.
Actually, the only change is that I updated the CPIW plus 1% figures based on the new economic forecast from King County.
And does it indeed make the picture look a little bit more negative?
Yes, it totally does. It goes from a positive amount at the end of 2028 as far as our reserve target to a negative 4 million.
Okay, I guess that's where I was going. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Executive Sat Paul Sidhu is online. He has a hands up, Marianne.
Marianne, I had a similar question. One is that the line 68 and 69, the target fund balance 70% of annual. Like, how did you guys arrive that to have 9 months of, is this a reserve or available for spending is the reserve? The reserve and fund balance are the same or they're separate?
Well, okay, no, they're not the same. Actually, the reserve balance. So what we're looking for, the reserve policy that was developed, is to acknowledge that, yes, we're going to be getting in revenue from sales taxes and from fees and things of that nature. But if at the end of 2028, the levy failed, we would want to have enough to be able to ensure that we could run for another year of operations, so that we could go back to the voters and ask for a new levy. So it was decided that we needed a target fund balance of 70% of annual operations. So the target fund balance is derived from the actual fund balance, but it's set at 70% because we know that we're going to be getting in other non-levy revenue. But if the levy fails and we have to go back to the voters, we're going to need enough reserve to be able to run for another year so that we can get another levy passed. So our target fund balance, according to the policy, is the amount on line 68.
Okay.
And so what line 69 does is compare it to what the actual ending fund balance is based on these projections. And so in 2028, we need $17.5 million according to our total ALS expense. But the ending fund balance on line 64 is only projected to be 13.5 million. So we're $4 million short.
Okay, thank you.
In executive and EOB, I would add that if we did get in that situation in 27 or 28, we would have to strip away programs to make that year work too. So it would be a serious look at what we would want to fund outside of the operational costs of those 5 medic units, which is a good bit of this other budget. So we'd have to strip away some programs if we got in that situation. Mayor Cortayas, you have your hand up. Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess this is a little bit new to me too, that we're having to run in a deficit now. And I actually had been thinking about this. We've added in line 50 the BLS subsidy. And I guess I'm thinking up at the top, there's sales tax, there's all kinds of other income. If inflation is going like this, does that limit our income on the sales tax side? We don't know. I mean, nobody can predict 6 years out, let alone 2 years out. So I'm wondering if we had to put in our plan then, because I know this time when we talked about the plan, when we talked about a new plan or how to spend money, we always pivoted to the plan that we put out 6 years ago. We probably should put some language in our plan that says where we would recommend cuts first. And I'm thinking, if you go back to the line 50, the BLS stuff, as much as I hate to say it, maybe that's the line we cut first as a recommendation, and just put that in the plan. That if our reserves start getting in trouble, then we start cutting the BLS subsidy, or make some recommendations of another 1 or 2 or 3 things that we want to cut, so that when we look at this document in 4 years, we've given some direction to the people that are looking at it. I just think it would be wise for us to plan for us either having a shortfall, or maybe also in the plan, if we start seeing reserves go up for who knows what reason, that we say, well, then we can subsidize BLS more or something. I think we need to give direction to what we're thinking today so that the future group knows what went into the plan.
Councilmember Lilliquist?
Yeah, I'm a little bit new to this, so I may not have it right, but my understanding with the way the levy works and how it's kind of indexed, and then it, declines across the life of the levy, at least in terms of the rate, it declines, is that we're on a perpetual sawtooth. If this thing is renewed every few years, it will go up at each renewal and then not keep pace with expenses, and then go up with a new renewal and not keep pace with expenses. Is this sawtooth sort of built in the nature of the funding? And if so, is the problem that's in the spreadsheet and that Scott's talking about expected and unavoidable, and also solvable if there are renewals?
Are you asking that to anybody in particular?
Yes, whoever has the answer. So I guess break it down. Am I correct that there's sort of a sawtooth nature to renewal, then the levy rate is adjusted downward across the life of the levy? If there's a renewal at the same rate, it actually jumps up in dollar value. And again, the rate is adjusted down across the life of levy. Then it would jump up again. If we project it out 50 years with continuous renewals, do we get a sawtooth? And if so, would we not always expect to run positive in the early years of the levy and turn negative in the end of the levy? Is this a feature that we should know about rather than a problem we should worry about?
Well, it comes down to what is our policy as far as the reserve fund balance, because actually we know that we're going to run positive. I mean, it's built into our forecasting, and we still expect to have that levy, the target reserve balance at the end of the levy, regardless of the sawtooth. So yes, we do understand that you'll have positive. So here we have, let's take a look here on line 62. This net after levy, I mean, we do see that in 2023, we have a positive amount. We have a positive amount in 24. We're almost break even in 25. And then, yes, we start running into a negative. But we do factor that in our projections and still expect to be able to meet our 70% target at the end of the 6 years. So the only thing driving this problem is that obviously we're in a situation of higher inflation, and so the forecasts have now changed. As a matter of fact, I should mention that King County is projecting, so I should say that our contracts are based on, we always go by whatever the June CPIW is for. So for this year, it will be the June CPIW that will be the factor that is used for the 2023 contract. So for example, last year, the June CPIW that's put out by the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the Seattle, Bellevue, Tacoma area was 6.3%. So that was the factor that we used in our contracts with Bellingham Fire District and Fire District 7 for this year. In the new plan, we're projecting CPIW, we're going to use CPIW plus 1%. So as of April, so the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases the Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue CPIW every 2 months. The latest one that was released is in April, and it was 8.5%. So right now in this projection, I'm using what King County is projecting for 2023. However, it could be actually quite a bit worse because the Bureau of Labor Statistics figure being 8.5%. If that carries through to June, and we do CPIW plus 1%, in 2023, we'll be increasing at 9.5% instead of this model that has 7.29%. So we'll be driving our reserve into a much lower situation than what you're seeing here.
Michael, can I continue if you don't mind?
Oh, yeah, council member. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, the hard part that Mary Ann's job is that there's these large uncertain factors that drive it, both on the sales tax revenue side and on the inflation side. But I think there's still a sawtooth nature. And if we, instead of looking at 5-6 years here, looking at 10 years before and 10 years after, we'd see that sawtooth. And so the issue here, I think, is what is the shape of that sawtooth? What's the slope? What's the magnitude of the sawtooth? And if we predict wrong, then of course the picture is worse at the end of each levy period, or better at the end of each levy period. So I get the difficulty in predicting, but I think that decision makers here need to understand that there's a sawtooth nature here, and turning from green to red is kind of expected, and our job is to make sure that sawtooth is manageable. So if there's a renewal, the next sawtooth will be big enough, and we will reset, and we won't set ourselves up for failure in the next renewal.
Mike,
go
excuse
ahead.
me. I apologize. I don't see a way to raise my hand on my computer, so I apologize for interrupting, but there's no prompt there for me to politely get into this. So I just would like to say that, BLS has worked very hard to get where we're at, to get this 1.5 million. We have the same expenses to deal with, the increases that the rest of the ALS agency has, and to just immediately jump on the BLS subsidy as an avenue to eliminate this deficit just seems wrong to me. I don't know, and it's 1.5 million is not a lot when you divide it between 13 agencies, but it's something to look forward to. And I just don't really like the idea of saying, well, let's just take it from BLS. It's not a good idea in my opinion.
So that was my comment, Rob Roy, and I agree. I don't want to take it from BLS, but then we should prioritize in this group where it should come from, in my mind. So it's, and I guess I look back at the sales tax line, Marianne, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you use 4% sales tax rise across the spectrum. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And so I mean, if inflation's at the higher numbers, one could expect sales tax to come in higher because everything is costing more. But we're just getting into what ifs. So my what if is, what do we cut if we come up with a deficit? That would be my question.
Chief McDermott has his hand up. Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, thank you. And Mayor Cortez, I have also kind of thought about this, and not that I want to take on any more work than anybody else does, but it might be, and correct me if I'm wrong, it might be a more productive conversation if we're looking at where do we cut if we're deficit spending, maybe to have the technical advisory board come up with some recommendations to the EOB, just sort of with a better eye on what the impacts to the overall system, with some assistance from the finance committee. But again, that's my perspective, just for a more efficient movement through this. But appreciate the opportunity to voice a comment.
Thanks, Chief. And Chief Scott Rickman has a hand up as well. Go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just going to echo what Dan just said. I think that we can look as a technical advisory group at the programs or different things that we would cut that would not impact service or have the least amount of service. And from our perspective, I mean, we know what those programs are and where we could cut. So yeah, I would ask that as well. And that's kind of the way this is designed anyway to work. So.
Good points. Go ahead, Tyler.
To build off of that and to kind of recognize Mayor Scott's policy suggestion, I mean, maybe this group just acknowledges in the plan that, as we move forward, the EOB will recommend to the technical advisory board to make operational guidance on which programs we could reduce expenditures to if we see that the target fund balance is being approached on an annual basis, to kind of allow for that operational discussion at the time that we really need it, instead of kind of making those broad strokes today. Giving that opportunity for the TAB to give that advice to the EOB on an annual basis when we get to that point could be a way that we incorporate it into the plan and kind of recognize that technical perspective.
Yeah, and at least from my perspective, I think it'd be a great exercise for the TAB, regardless of the budget, just to understand all the programs that are out there and how they're functioning. So the TAB could, over the next 6 months or so, develop a sort of contingency plan if we got in that situation, especially, approaching 25, 26, 27, if that economy is drastically changing by then, we would want to have that in place. Councilmember Lilliquist.
Well, I certainly agree that it's good to know where we would cut if we need to cut. That's always good exercise, and it's good to have principles to guide that if and when it comes to that. But what I guess I'm saying is that we're projecting a $4 million quote unquote deficit that is below our target, we would still have healthy reserves, so below the reserves we want, that I wouldn't start cutting if we're actually staying on track with the expected deficit, right? That's the expected deficit due to the sawtooth nature of a levy, and no levy is going to avoid that sawtooth. So yeah, let's have plans in place, but only if we're below these projections, which already show a pattern of a greater rate of accumulation of reserves and then a lower rate of accumulation of reserves below our target, below the 70% target. You see what I'm saying? If we end up at a negative, $4 million below the reserve target in the year 2028, that's not a problem. That's what we're expecting.
Mayor Cortez.
I agree with Tyler. That's probably why we pay him the big bucks. But anyway, that's a good idea to refer this to the tab, technical review board or group. Anyway, and also, Michael, my worry is that the time you need the reserve is at the end of the 6 years in case the levy doesn't pass again. And that is not the time you want to be having your reserve under your required amount. So we have to be careful that at the end of the plan, we're going to burn it down a bit because we know it'll pass again. Well, you don't know that. That's the issue. Anyway, so there's risk associated with with the plan letting it go down, even though I agree it is a sawtooth. Anyway.
Mary Ann.
Can I make a suggestion? Because I was a bit distressed to see that $4 million deficit. So I did start doing a little bit of playing around with things. What I did is that the interest income, we were very conservative as far as just, that was before our we developed the plan before our rapid inflation. So in updating, I did an update in which I took the King County investment rates that they are now projecting as of March 2022 and plugged those into our interest rates so that it actually increased our interest income line item. I'm a bit reluctant to increase sales tax revenue at more than 4% per year, but that could be another discussion. But I did increase the interest income. The other thing that I did is to cut out the plus 1%, that we would just go with an increase inflator each year of the CPIW. Instead of doing CPIW plus 1%, we would just do CPIW for Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue. So that instead of, let's see, here's our per unit. So instead of this being 7.29%, it's now at 6.29% and so on across the board. And if we did that, our bottom line comes out to a positive 2 million. Now, I want to caution people that doesn't mean that we have $2 million available for spending, because if the actual if the June CPIW comes in at 8.5%, which it seems likely to do, this is going to end up being a negative 600,000, but a negative 600,000 is better than a negative 4 million. So that's just a proposal that may be possible as far as making the forecast work out to be within our targeted fund balance policy.
Oh, go ahead, Executive Sidhu.
I was going to suggest, Mary Ann, that's a very good point, but we should keep the projections which you had CPIW plus 1%, but we should visit this spreadsheet every 2 years, like when we do biennium budget or something. This is good to have that projection, but yeah, we should visit every 2 years and see where the reality is. And then this board can make their decisions for whatever adjustments need to be made. And projection, we cannot just go on, say, okay, we'll look at it 7 years from now.
Mayor Cortez?
Yeah, I would agree with some of that we need to review it. I think, well, this group will review this at least annually. I mean, it's going to come before us every year. So we're going to know how we're tracking. And I guess what Mary Ann points out, which should be obvious to all of us, you can't predict 6 years out. And if you just change a 1% here, there, or somewhere, it has huge swings at the end because it's so cumulative. So I think the plan that we have, or that we presented, is good. We just need to have direction. And I think the tab is the direction we need if there's issues with spending and we have to make adjustments along the way.
You know, if I could, Mayor Scott and Sat Paula, that does sound good. Mary Ann, to your point on interest income, you know how much additional revenue that brings in? So if the projection was to increase the interest income as you had laid out, but to keep the 1%, what does that do to the projection?
Well, right now, that line item is 2,154,000. And let me go back to the other spreadsheet.
So it's not that much, a couple $100,000.
I just have to get it to the right place here. It's about 1.5 million.
A little better.
Because in those two ideas, and to build off of what Sat Paul was indicating, it does feel comfortable to adjust that interest income amount to the King County projections. And I would recommend keeping the 1% on the CPIW.
Okay, so then instead of, I think if we're going to gain 1.5 million, that would reduce our deficit to 2.5 million.
And then we include that language in the plan that we've kind of been talking about, that on an annual year, you know, the EOB will be reviewing the financial projections, and if adjustments need to happen, would make a recommendation to the tab to provide some operational reductions to ensure a healthy fund balance that meets the target at the end of the levy cycle. Can I make that as a motion?
You made that a motion, I'll support it.
I make that as a motion.
So Tyler Schroeder has a motion on the table. So we need a second on that.
I'll second.
Thanks, Mayor. And so discussion.
And so just to reiterate it, and we'll adjust the interest income as we've talked about. And in the levy plan, we will put a section in there that recognizes that on an annual basis, the EOB will review the financial projections to the end of the levy cycle. And if on an annual basis, some adjustments need to happen, we will engage the technical advisory board for recommendations on operational adjustments that would be able to accomplish that targeted fund balance at 70%.
Mary Ann?
The only thing I want to, since we're going to keep CPIW plus 1%, do be prepared that for the 2023 contracts, we'll probably be using something like 9.5% instead of 7.29%. So even though we gained $1.5 million on the interest, we're going to lose based on the higher CPIW. Just to put that out there, that's all.
Yep. Thank you, Mary Ann.
Councilmember Lillquist?
Sorry, trying to find the unmute button. I certainly support the motion if it's that these exercises and this planning and recommendations would be if we deviate from basically the current projection. In other words, the fact that we'll be running lower numbers in the out years itself isn't justification. But if those out years look any worse on a year-by-year basis, then the adjustment would come. If it's understood that way, I think there's every reason to plan and track whether or not our projection is, it's worse than projected or better than projected.
Yeah, that sounds accurate, Councilmember Lillquist.
So any further discussion? We'd move to vote on that and would like to hear if there's any objections to the motion. Hearing no objections to the motion, we'll assume that was approved unanimously by the EOB, and we'll record that on the record. Thanks everybody for that. I will say on the back of that too, one of the things that we were a little bit conservative on was that GEMT revenues. I don't know if they'll go up a lot. So the calculations on the GEMT revenue are based on how many units you're running, call volume with some other stuff in there. So an additional medic unit up there could yield a little bit more from the GEMT as well. But that was a good projection and what everybody felt comfortable out on those GMT revenues too. But there could be a little bit more coming in with that new medic unit building out too. So any more discussion on the budget? Any comments, budget, or anybody out there in the fire chiefs listening or tab or? If not, we'll move on. We'll take those recommendations in motion. And so what I heard out there, two things, we have a motion to accept that budget with those caveats. And then the second one is that we'll take back to the tab the exercise of defining operational priorities, just if we were to experience significant, decrease in revenues or an in-fund balance was below that 70%. So we'll take that back to the tab as a project. And then we'll move on to the next item. And let me bring up the agenda. So the next agenda item is kind of to look at the recommendations and endorsements of in the plan. And so I mailed, actually, I mailed most everybody out the new version, which was a version 8. So just a little history. We started this process about 18 months ago. The EOB commissioned members of the levy planning committee to move this work forward. And actually in some power meetings we had over the last couple of months, we've got a version 8 of the plan, which is, I believe, about 99% there. I do want to note that I got some edits from Local 106 here on Monday afternoon. I think most of those edits that we got from Local 106 are already captured in the V8. I'll go through that again this afternoon. There are a couple of minor edits, but the 23 to 28 plan is about there. So as we kind of went through all this, we took what was existing and of course built budgets on that. So you'll see the recommendations flow through for what we're doing now, which is supporting the ALS units, operational funds, the paramedics that are out there actually doing the work on day to day, and programs that are funded through the ALS operational. So same thing for the basic life support. A lot of those budget recommendations are related to supporting training and of course the BLS allocation over the next 6-year levy. And then you'll see down at the bottom, we address the training needs, educational needs. Those recommendations support the paramedic school and then other basic life support education in the system out there. So I don't know if anybody wants to go through the recommendations piece by piece. It might be more productive to just solicit from the EOB if there's parts of the plan that you have questions about or would want to dive into on those recommendations.
Nobody read it.
I'll say this, it was a laborious process that the levy planning committee, we went through this plan line by line by line. That's the reason we have a version 8 and we just have a ton of edits in it to get us to the version 8 and with a lot of this good work and thoughtful input. So we can go down the list if you like. I'm just not sure the best way productively to have the EOB look at all this, assuming that many of you have read the plan already or looked at it.
Mayor Scott?
Yeah, well, I for one have read the plan and put in a ton of edits, and I don't know, we're kind of to the point where we're doing minor edits, but I'd make a motion, we approve the plan as presented, and if somebody wants to make some changes, we can.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve the plan as is in a second. Will we have a discussion?
That's with the previous motion.
Correct.
Right?
With the
Yep.
budget, yes, absolutely. We'll make sure that that's captured in that motion. Yeah. And we will update that, by the way. So Mary Ann's going to clean that budget example up a little bit so it's more readable in the plan. and we'll insert that into a new version. And actually, probably what I'll do is maybe send that out as a V9 final version, so that you can, and I'll get that back out the EOB as soon as I update a couple of those graphics in there. If the EOB is comfortable with that, but I think the general recommendations, the work, I think we're there. The groups, like I said, have worked very, very hard on this. And so I think we've got consensus with the tab. Executives to do.
Yeah, and this can count as my input and feedback as well. I just want to bring up the question of training school. I think we have 7 or 8 people, 4 people in one, the 4 people in the other section. And this is something which is not unique to Whatcom County. This is unique to all this Western region. And I just bring it up from my experience when I was at Bellingham Technical College, that it could be with the amount of money we are investing, we could work with the college and let them develop a program and somehow share that with other couple of counties or thing, so that we can lower the cost of training. If you look at per person training is quite expensive. And I think this was brought up last year when we had this discussion, and council brought it up too, and Mr. Byrd brought up as well. And my experience is that when these refineries were taking young people as plant operators, and they were taking them into 6 months to 1 year of training and spending a lot of money, paying wages and everything, and Bellingham Technical College took over a 2-year degree program. And these refineries came in and helped build that program. And in the end, they were both winners. Now, it may be that we could subsidize some of these, which the refineries didn't do, subsidize the students. They went on their own, got a degree, and then they applied for a job. But they were given that they will not hire anybody outside of them. If these people are available, then they will hire. That will be first preference for hiring. Now, that may not be the model we want to use in this case, but there could be another model of that kind where we can share this function with other counties and lower this cost. That would be, and I'll be happy to help if there's a thought about something like that, doing something like that. There are different ideas to do that.
Thank you, Executive. Yeah, and we've talked a good bit about that in several of the committees, and we've gotten there in some small ways. We had a couple students from out of county attending that class last year. It went really well. The fire chiefs down there really loved the paramedics that were trained out of Bellingham. They get a lot of experience with Bellingham. And we are definitely interested in workforce development across the regions for that. Scott Rickman has his hand up. Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, we're already actively working on this. I know this is conversations in the background for as long as I've been here. So we've already got interest from Camano Island, Everett, Arlington, and several other jurisdictions for the 2023 cohort. And I think that there's going to have to be some restructuring that happens with that then. I will say right now, I'm not in favor of turning this over to the tech school. I will continue to say that moving forward, but I think that we can bring individuals into this program from outside to offset the costs. And then we have to, I think, have a serious discussion about what we're charging outside individuals to come into the program, whether it's a reasonable amount or if we need to up that amount. So I think there's opportunity here for sure. And like I said, I've already had at least those 3 major groups reach out. Harborview, which is the program that many people have been funneled through historically, is a closed program now. They're not allowing folks into that program anymore. So in fact, I have the email in front of me from Everett today. So definitely something we need to look at. And I do agree with you, on that, Mr. Executive, and we'll just continue to work on it.
So any other discussion? We do have a motion out on the floor there. Any more discussion of any specific parts of the plan or information people want?
I'll just speak to the plan real quick. I first want to kind of congratulate the group and thank them for all the hard work to get to this point. I think that this next 6-year plan really builds off of the existing 6-year and all the good work that we've done to this point, and really provide some good specific ideas and direction on where the system's going to go. I am excited, or not excited, but I am happy about the opportunity to be able to provide additional funding for the BLS agencies. I know it's a slug to figure out and to accomplish that part of the very important part of our overall county system, and as much support as we can do through the countywide EMS levy for that is good. To that point, I just want to urge the TAB and the fire districts to really work together on how best to leverage the EMS dollars into kind of a local coordinated effort. Not that we don't already do that, but I think that there would be some ways to do that coordination, kind of using our existing ALS service as somewhat of an example to ensure that there is a sustainable plan that gets the most service out into the streets if we're struggling with volunteers and we're struggling with how the different BLS agencies operate out into the area, and work together with what a plan would be to accomplish that moving forward in a more efficient way. I say that not to recognize that we don't do that already. I just say that to urge the TAB and the fire districts to think a little bit how that works, and to ensure that the $1.5 million that is given through the levy is done in the best fashion that we can. So, but overall, I'm going to support the levy plan. I think it's a really good document, and I'm excited to see where it goes in the next 6 years.
Thanks, Tyler. Mayor Fleetwood.
Yeah, I share Tyler's remarks. I just want to express my thanks to everyone that's worked on this. I got fully briefed, I guess it was last week, by the city team. I see Dan McDermott present, and they went over everything. I recognize that it constitutes a lot of hard work from a lot of people. They've come up with you've all come up with a really good recommendation, and I wholeheartedly support the motion.
Thank you, Mayor Fleetwood. Dr. Wayne, see your hand up.
No, I just want to thank everybody. Sorry about that. Typical, where's the button? Thank everybody for the general and overall support. I've been here since 1974. And just a piece of history, that was the days of Crown Ambulance and all the things that the community did to bring us to where we are today. And I think all of you deserve a thank you for the efforts you're making to make a difference, to provide, as I tell the medics, you're there to provide care and caring. And they are both in a lot of ways different, and both in a lot of ways the same thing. So I just wanted to throw a thank you in.
Thank you, Dr. Wayne. So any more comments or discussion on the motion? Hearing no other discussion, we would go for the vote, and we could acknowledge that just by no objections from the EOB at this point on moving this plan forward. Hearing no objections, we'll move this to unanimous approval, just noting that we have one member absent, Councilmember Lilquist.
No, that's a hand clap. That's a yay.
Oh, I saw it back. Well, thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate that. Yeah, this has been a long road. That's been a big sigh of relief, so we can start moving on with the other work that's sitting out in the wings there to support this moving down the road. And once again, I do want to. This was. I'm not sure the fire chiefs believe me when I said this, but this is kind of a relationship builder. This work that went into this document among all the fire districts and commissioners and firefighters and paramedics that provided input for this. So I think this really just brings the groups together. Some of those conversations were tough, they were tense, but we got through them and we were able to produce this plan. So I really do appreciate the group of that work, and it really does set, I think, a tone for the next 6 years on how the EMS system is going to operate. So thanks for the work of all the committee members over the last 18 months.
Mike, just a little bit of housekeeping. So what you'll do is put a version 9 together that incorporates the changes that we talked about today. We'll do the final draft and send it out to the EOB as the one that was passed today, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should have that out by Friday. Actually, I take that back. But this is a holiday weekend. If it's okay, that you'll be probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. I'll get the final versions back to everybody.
Sounds great.
Yeah, thanks. Number 3, more of this was just a little bit of talk about the review of the resolutions or the endorsement letters. So actually, I have a number of the organizations already thinking about the resolution. I pulled out our county resolution from 6 years ago, and I'll do some editing and update the language, to current date, time, and etc. And I know that Chief Pethick was going to work on it for City of Bellingham, and then I'll reach out to the other representatives to see how those resolutions might come in. The other thing that we'll do on the plan is, of course, we would need a signature on everybody. So I've been informed that we will be able to send this out to the levy planning appointed members from the EOB. I mean, we can do that via DocuSign. And so we'll do that process sometime next week after I get a V9 out to everybody, and we make sure that that version is okay. Once V9 goes out and everybody's liking that, we'll bring those endorsements in and we'll get this signed. Next steps are I scheduled to do a presentation to the county council on June 21st, and we'll introduce a plan to the council then. But the first steps are obviously to gain those endorsements, and then of course the cities over 50,000 need to provide a resolution for this. So I think we've got that scheduled for the city council meeting on the 27th. And then after that, all that's wrapped up, this would come to the county council meeting on July 11th. And of course, I'll write the memo to the executive asking to put this on the ballot as well after this plan approval. So those are the next steps for it. And then our August 4th deadline, I believe August 4th is the deadline to have this on the ballot for the November election. So those are timelines we're looking at, and I think we're on schedule. In fact, I anticipate a little bit of feedback on the second EOB meeting that we've got for June 15th. So having the plan approved, I can move some of the stuff faster now. And then I'll bring to the June 15th meeting any updates or anything relative to this. And that might be a good session for the EOB to planning on how we communicate this out to the public in the future. And just so you know, I've been working with Brian Heinrich over at the city, as well as Jed Holmes, sorry about that, Jed, to work with a directed and agreed communications for both the city and the fire districts. And so we'll be working the next part of that, which is how do we promote this and get it out to the public so they're aware of what's going on. So those are next plans for that. Any questions or ideas or comments on the resolution and the endorsements? Great. So, boy, 10:42. I think we can end the meeting. But first, anything good of the order from the community out there?
Well, keep up the good work. I think it was a lot of effort, and I think we all appreciate that.
Thank you, Executive. Chief Mailing, I see your hand up.
So I would just like to thank the EOB and all the members of it and everybody else that did work hard on all this, especially also too last night with the passing of the 5 million and the 1.4 for the Gurneys load systems. This will be a large help to many districts and departments throughout our county, big and small. So I just want to thank all of you for listening to us and some of our things that we are going through out here, and we do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I just want to point out that Chief Hank Mailing is the new president of our Chiefs Association. So thanks for all your work, Chief. Anything else we get the order? Okay, well, I would enjoy a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, EOB. Appreciate all the work and teamwork. And once again, this is moving a good plan to the future. So we'll see you June 15th, and please reach out if I can do anything for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
You bet. Have a good week.